Hello, and welcome to this lesson on understanding slope-intercept form. So this is the next extension of what we did in the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we were looking at understanding what slope is, the slope of a line, that fraction, what it looks like when you graph it, what it looks like when you find it from a table and from some points. So now we're going to take that slope piece and we're going to bridge it into slope-intercept form, which is kind of like the equation of a line. So the essential question says, how do I write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form? Did you know that slope-intercept form is really just a simple way to write the equation of a straight line? Got an extra word 2 in there. All you need is the slope of the line and where the line intercepts or crosses the y-axis. That's why it's called slope-intercept form. Those are the two pieces you need, the slope and the intercept. So we have here a vocabulary word. So the y-intercept. This, by the way, is that intercept piece of the slope-intercept form. It's where your line crosses the y-axis. This always happens when x equals 0. So on this graph I have here, the line, I'm highlighting in red, my line is crossing the y-axis at 0, 1, 2, at a value of 3. So this line has a y-intercept of 3. So using that y-intercept and what we know about slope, I could even say right now that this line has an equation of y equals 1/2 x plus 3. The 1/2 comes from my slope, up 1/2. And this 3 is my y-intercept. And we're going to learn all about this in the lesson, but I'm going to show you, like, that's what we're doing. We're extending this slope that we learned in the previous video into now y-intercept. So what is slope-intercept form? Well, it is this equation, y equals mx plus b. That is another equation that is provided for you on the formula sheet. It's a very important equation. We're going to be using a lot of it over the next 4 units, just like with slope. So y equals mx plus b. Put a star next to it if you need to. That's important. Where the m is the slope of the line, just like I plugged in this 1/2 here. That was the slope. I plugged it in that spot. And the b is the y-intercept. My y-intercept was a positive 3, so I plugged in a positive 3. If it was a negative 2, I'd put in -2, a negative 2 in there. So the first few problems are just simply identify the slope and the y-intercept from the graph. We're not going to quite write the equation yet. Actually, I lied. We probably will. But for now, just what is the slope and what is the y-intercept? And you'll see a lot of times that's abbreviated as just the y-intercept. So it's expanding on what we did in the previous lesson. So the slope of this line is from one point to the next, to the next, to the next, up 1/1, up 1/1, up 1/1. My slope is 1/1. That's my rise over run. My y-intercept is then where the line crosses the y-axis. It's crossing the y-axis right here. This up and down line is the y-axis. My line is crisscrossing right there, which is a value of 2. Believe it or not, those are the only two pieces you need to write the equation of this line. It would be technically y equals 1/1 x plus 2. You don't really need the over 1 from our slope. Most people just put y equals 1x or even just plain old x. But for now, I'm going to leave it. But that's it. That's the whole next part of this lesson. So for the next few problems, we're just going to stick to the slope and the y-intercept, just to save a little bit of time. All right, So looking at this line, I see points here, and here, and here. So my slope would be from one point to the next. If I'm doing rise over run, my rise is down 2. From one point to the next, because you always go across from left to right. From one point to the next, I'm going down 2 and then over 3. My slope is negative 2/3. My y-intercept is where this line crosses the y-axis, and it's crossing at a value of 0, 1, 2, 3, a value of positive 4. Using just those two pieces, I could write the equation, but I'm not going to for this problem. Okay, I would like you to pause the video, and I would like you to try these two. So same thing, just list what is the slope. Man, not writing. So what is the slope and what is the y-intercept for both of these? Go ahead and pause the video, do them on your own. When you're ready to continue, hit play, and we will go through them together. All right, letter C. I see points here, here, here. That must be 1, so it would follow the same pattern, and so would that. So the pattern I'm seeing is from one dot to the next, I'm going to go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. That's my rise over run. My y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. It is crossing the y-axis at 1 value below 0, which would be negative 1. That's one place below the origin, and the origin is always 0. So this is negative 1. Letter D. My slope from one point to the next is going to be up 0. So if I do rise over run, so rise up 0, because I mean, think of it, I'm not going to go up and I'm not going to go down, so I'm going up 0 over, well, 1 unit or 5 units or whatever. It's going to simplify to a slope of 0. This perfectly flat line has a slope of 0. The y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. Well, if this is 0 on the y-axis, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. Okay, so that's just identifying the slope, identifying the y-intercept. This should be a letter E. What is the y-intercept of the line that goes through the given point with a slope of negative 3 over 2? I want you to pause the video. I want you to try this one. So can you find the y-intercept of the line that goes through that point, this point here, but has a slope of negative 3 over 2? Pause it, try it, and then hit play when you're ready to continue. All right, so let's see. If I go through this point with a slope of negative 3 over 2, means I'm going to go down 3 over 2, down 3 over 2, down 3, 1, 2, 3 over 2, down 3 over 2, and I can kind of squeeze another one in there. It would be just right above that. So the line would look something like this. And my job was to look for the y-intercept of the line that went through here with that slope. So the y-intercept would be right here. This place where the line crosses the y-axis, that's my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is negative 2. It's crossing at 2 units below 0. That's it. That was pretty easy. So this one would be letter F, I suppose, then. So my letters seem to be off. What is the y-intercept of a line that goes through the given point with a slope of 2? I'll do this one. You did the last one. So through this line with a slope of 2 means I would go 2 over 1. Up 2, boom, boom, over 1. So I'm imagining right here. So I went up 1, up 2, over 1. Now, I can't really go any more to the upper right side, so I'm going to start going down this way. So I'm going to do the reverse of my slope. I'm going to go down 2 over 1 the wrong way. And you see how that would still make my points in a straight line. Down 2 over 1 the wrong way. Down 2 over 1 the wrong way. Down 2 over 1 the wrong way would be, I'm estimating, right down here somewhere. Now I can see those points. And I mean, I could try to extend out to here. There we go. That works. And our job was to find the y-intercept of this line. So the y-intercept of this line would be the point that, well, whatever that is, because that's where the line crosses the y-axis. That's the value 0. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6 is my y-intercept. All right, example 2. What is slope-intercept form? Well, we talked about that earlier. We looked at what the formula looks like. It looks like y equals mx plus b. That's what slope-intercept form will always look like. So our job in these problems is to identify if the equation is written in slope-intercept form. So that's a yes or no. Is it slope-intercept form? Yes. Is it slope-intercept form? No. Okay, this one is slope-intercept form because it fits the pattern. Y equals mx plus b. The x and the y will always stay x and y. But the m and the b, remember how we said this piece is our slope and the b is our y-intercept. But x and y stay x and y. This one does not fit into that pattern. It is not y equals. There's other junk over here. So that's why that one's not in slope-intercept form. Now the second part of the question says, if it is slope-intercept form, identify the slope and y-intercept. Okay, so slope, y-intercept. The slope would be 5. That is my m piece. The piece attached to the variable is the slope. The coefficient of x is the slope. And then the b, the y-intercept, is the constant. In this case, it's 9. It's the thing without a variable. Now, we don't need to do that for letter b because this is not slope-intercept form. It said if it is slope-intercept form, then you find these things. So these two are done. Okay, here is letters C and D. If you could, go ahead and pause the video and try these two on your own. Then we'll go through them together when you're finished. Okay, you should have found letter C is a big old yes, and letter D is a, I almost wrote no, but technically that's a yes, and we'll explain why in a second. So then you were looking for what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. Well, the slope for letter C is 1/2. Y equals mx plus b. The m is your slope. That is our slope piece. It is 1/2. The y-intercept is this b. The y-intercept here is not 12. It is a -12. The negative and the 12 are attached together. It is a -12. All right, letter D. I said I was really going to write no, that this is not slope-intercept form, but it actually is. It's just written in kind of an ugly way. So things that have to happen. Well, is my y variable by itself? Yes. In fact, if I take this whole problem and I just flip it, I'm going to put the y on the left-hand side and everything else on the right-hand side. Is that slope-intercept form? Because I didn't really change anything. I just switched what side of the equation both pieces were on. And if this is slope-intercept form, then so is that. And the answer is yes, it is slope-intercept form. So that means we can now go through and find our slope and our y-intercept. Our slope is the piece attached to the x, which is -2. Our y-intercept is the piece without a variable, which is the 8. And that's it. So slope-intercept. I also like to think of it as, it's called slope-intercept form. The slope number comes first, the intercept number comes second, if it's written in this kind of normal format. Obviously, well, maybe not obvious, but I could even make this problem a little bit uglier. If I change color, I could write the problem like this: y equals 8 minus 2x. This technically is still slope-intercept form. The y is by itself. This piece, the -2, the one attached to the variable, that is my slope. This 8 is my y-intercept. Okay, so they can be written other ways, although this format, the way you see it here, this is like the proper scientific notation. Okay, 2 more for me and then 2 more for you. We are trying to identify, are these slope-intercept form? Letter E. The answer is going to be no. The reason is because of this 2. There is no way to get rid of that exponent without destroying how pretty this equation looks. We're going to have to do a square root like we learned earlier, and it's really going to mess us up, and I'm going to have like square root of y, and it's going to be a big, huge mess. Because of that exponent, this is not slope-intercept form. It cannot be written y equals mx plus b. It is impossible to do. Letter F. Is that slope-intercept form? Is that y equals mx plus b? The answer is yes. My b value, in case you're curious, is 0. This line would cross my y-axis at 0. That is the y-intercept. And I can show you, this is probably going to pull up Desmos. So if I type in y equals 2.5x, do you see how it's crossing the y-axis at 0? Because the y-intercept is 0. So this is slope-intercept form. The slope, I spelled slop. The slope is 2.5. That's the number attached to the x. The y-intercept here is this 0. Okay, letters G and H. Go ahead and pause the video and try these 2 on your own. When you're ready to continue, hit play, and we'll go through them together. All right, letter G. Is that slope-intercept form? Yes. Yes, it is. It just has an ugly slope and intercept. mx plus b. Does it fit that format? Well, yes, it does. This is our slope. This is our y-intercept. So our slope here is a -7.2. Our y-intercept is a 4/3, which we're allowed to have. Even though we normally have the slope as a fraction, it's okay to be a decimal. I mean, if I type this exactly into Desmos, Desmos could do it just fine. Y equals -7.2x plus 4/3. That is slope-intercept form. The calculator, the computer, knows exactly what that is and is able to graph it without any troubles at all. All right. Letter H. Is that slope-intercept form? No. because the y variable is not by itself. I mean, we could eventually do this. We're going to learn how to do this later on. But for now, that is not slope-intercept form because of this piece right here. Now, we now know what slope-intercept form looks like. Y equals mx plus b. Our next job is going to be able to take equations that are not currently in slope-intercept form, like the ones you see here, and then put them into slope-intercept form. Make them slope-intercept form, being able to identify what is our slope and our intercept. So here, first problem. Now, in order to make this slope-intercept form, basically what we'd like to do, my kind of goal that I have in my head, is to get the y variable by itself. If you can do that 90% of the time, it will be slope-intercept form. That other kind of 10%, usually you're just going to have to do some simplifying on the right. So check this out. To get the y variable by itself, I get rid of adds and subtracts before multiplies and divides. This is a times by 2. Getting rid of this times by 2 will always be last. Getting rid of the other junk is first. So that gives me 2y equals. These are not like terms. I cannot take 8 and minus a 3x. He has an x, he doesn't. So I'm just bringing both pieces down. But I do put the x piece first because that's how slope-intercept form looks. Y equals mx plus b. I put the x piece first. This piece will eventually turn into my intercept here. Now the only thing different between this equation and this equation is the y variable is by itself. So I need to get rid of this times by 2, so I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. And we get y equals, when you divide by 2, you're taking everything on the top and dividing by 2. So we're going to take negative 3 divided by 2, and we're going to take 8 divided by 2. Negative 3 over 2. If this was something that divided evenly, like say if this was a negative 4 divided by 2 would be 2. But this does not divide evenly. I do not want to put a decimal here. I mean, it's not technically wrong to put a decimal there. It's just not as good. We like having our slopes as fractions, so we are going to leave our slope a fraction. It's just negative 3 divided by 2 becomes negative 3 over 2. If that fraction would simplify, I would. Then I'm going to divide. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we have the equation y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 4. That is slope-intercept form now. And the question did say, after we make it slope-intercept form, to identify the slope and the intercept. So my slope and my y-intercept are, the slope is the negative 3 over 2. The y-intercept is that positive 4. Letter B. So I'm trying to get the y variable by itself. I only have one step to do here. If I could get this negative 4 here gone, so it's negative 4y equals 2x minus 12. If I could get rid of this negative 4 in front of the y variable, we would be in slope-intercept form. And I can do that simply by dividing by negative 4 on both sides. So now y equals, let's see, 2x divided by negative 4, because we're going to divide both pieces. So I'm doing one at a time. 2x divided by negative 4. Well, 2 divided by 4 doesn't divide evenly. We don't get a nice pretty whole number, but it's a fraction that we can simplify. 2 over 4 would normally simplify to 1/2. So we're going to get 1 half x. And then don't forget about your negative. This would be a negative 1/2. I personally like to put the negative on the top, but there is nothing wrong with having your negative down in the middle here. Nobody really puts it in the denominator. It's either usually out front or up top. Out front's, I guess, technically more correct, so I'll leave it there. And then when we take our negative 12 divided by negative 4, we're going to get a positive 3. So that gives us a slope of negative 1/2. This is my slope. It's slope-intercept form. My y-intercept is that positive 3. Okay, so you get the y variable by itself. You make it look like slope-intercept form, and then just identify the slope and the intercept. Okay, 2 for me, so here's 2 for you. Go ahead and pause the video. Try these 2 on your own. When you're ready to continue, hit play, and we will go through it together. All right, letter C. So in order to get the y variable by itself, I'm going to start by subtracting 2x on both sides to cancel out this positive 2x. 3y equals negative 2x plus 9. I cannot combine these two together, so I just bring both pieces down. Here's my negative 2x. Here's my positive 9. We are then going to divide by 3 in order to get the y by itself. And we have y equals negative 2/3 x, or negative 2/3x. That, as a fraction, does not simplify, so I just bring down negative 2/3x. 9 divided by 3 does simplify and does divide to a nice pretty number, so I'm just going to bring down that positive 3. Now my slope is negative 2/3. The y-intercept is positive 3. As with any of these problems, I remind you that if you did not get what I got when you worked this through on your own, or if you got stuck somewhere, the biggest question you can ask yourself is, why did I make a mistake? Where did I make the mistake? Is it something as simple as, I forgot to subtract 2x first, I divided by 3 first? That's a very easy mistake to make, and one that's easy to fix. As long as you know the mistake you made, you can fix it. But if you got something wrong or you got stuck and you're not sure why and where, and you just keep moving on, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to learn from that mistake and you're going to make the same mistake again. So ask yourself if you're not sure why you messed something up. Here, letter D. In order to get the y variable by itself, we are going to get rid of the x piece right here. So the problem says negative 2/5 x plus y equals negative 7. So I'm going to make that 2/5 x, I'm going to subtract it from both sides. So minus 2/5 x here, minus 2/5 x there. So I'm subtracting 2/5 x on both sides. On the left-hand side, they cancel out, and we have y equals, which is kind of our goal. That's going to make this slope-intercept form. On the right-hand side, that negative 2/5 x and that minus 7 do not combine together. I'm just going to bring them both down, and we're actually done. That is slope-intercept form. So our slope is the negative 2/5. Notice I'm not writing the x. The x does not need to come along with. The x is not part of the slope. It's just the number in front of the variable. The y-intercept is a negative 7, not positive 7. It is a negative 7. And that's it. That was letters C and D. And hopefully you were successful in writing them in slope-intercept form. That's going to be a very big skill for us. Which is why we have a couple more here. So, To make this y by itself, I'm going to divide by 5 and divide by 5. These cancel. Y equals 4/5 x. My 4 is a little ugly. I'll fix them up. Okay. That's by itself. My slope and my y-intercept is, well, the slope is the number in front of the variable, which is the 4/5. So y equals mx plus b. This is my slope piece. My y-intercept is the number without a variable, which is a 0. I don't have it. It's a ghost. I mean, I could put a plus 0 here, but that's what it would be. It's the number without a variable. It's the constant. This is my y-intercept, which there is none, so it's 0. Now, the problems can be uglier as well. Look at this one. The steps, though, oopsie, that's okay, are pretty much the same. I'm going to start by getting rid of the add and subtract first. I'm going to subtract 2.5x on both sides. I get negative 4y equals negative 2.5x plus 1.8. Again, the two pieces do not combine because they're not like terms. They have different variables. So I just bring both down. I'm then going to divide by negative 4 to get the y variable by itself. And we have, maybe it might be calculator time. And as a quick note, before I type these into the calculator, do you see how our original problem starts with lots of decimals? That's a sign for us that it's okay to have decimals in our final answer. Typically in math, if your problem starts with fractions, you'll kind of keep fractions to the end. If your problem starts with decimals, you'll keep the decimals, unless the problem states something otherwise. But because this problem starts with, 2.5 and 1.8, I'm fine just getting a decimal for an answer. So I'm typing in negative 2.5, divide by negative 4. It's going to give me a positive 0.625. That's my slope. And if it really bothers you that that's a decimal, you can hit the switcheroo button and then simplify, and we're going to get 5/8. There we go. So y equals 5/8 x. It's the same decimal version, fraction version. And then when I take negative, that's not a negative. I'm going to take 1.8 divide by negative 4, and we get negative 0.45. We kind of like our y-intercepts to be decimals, because for most of us, it's much easier to graph 0.45 on a number line than to graph whatever that would be as a fraction. 18 fraction 40 and simplify 9/20. I don't know about you, but I don't really know where 9/20 is so well on a number line. It's about halfway, but most people will understand 0.45 a little bit better. So either of these are fine answers, just different slope. One is a fraction, one is a decimal. So our slopes are, I'm going to leave it the original form. I'm just going to keep the decimal. That's probably the preferred answer, 0.625. And the y-intercept here is negative 0.45. All right. So I did 2 more. You please do 2 more. Letters G and H. Go ahead and pause the video and try these last 2 of this type on your own. And when you're ready, continue, hit play, and we'll go through it together. Alrighty, letter G. Well, let's get to it. So we're going to divide by this negative 4 last. So we're going to get rid of this positive 3x first. So we subtract 3x on both sides. Negative 4y equals negative 3x, technically plus 0 if you want to keep him there, but we don't need him. I'm going to divide by -4 on both sides, and we have y equals +3/4. That's -3 over -4, and I simplified. -3 fraction -4 just simplifies down to +3/4. The negatives kind of cancel when they simplify. And then technically it's still a +0. We don't have to write it. That's why I put it in ghost mode. Our slope, though, is now a +3/4. We know that. And, I spelled slop again. And our y-intercept here is a big old 0. And I'm realizing in my equation down here, I forgot my x. So I'll throw him in. There we go. That's actually a fairly common mistake students make as well. I don't make the mistake very often, but you see there, I sometimes still do. The x does need to be there. It's part of the equation. Letter H. In order to get the y by itself, I'm going to divide by this 2 last. So I'm going to subtract 0.3x on both sides first, giving me 2y equals -0.3x minus 4. So I just brought both pieces down because they are not like terms and they cannot be combined together. It's already starting to look like slope-intercept form. If we can get rid of this times by 2, which we can by dividing by 2, on both sides, we are going to have y equals, which is our goal. And y equals what? Well, -0.3 divided by 2 is -0.15. And I'm okay leaving it as a decimal because it started. The problem starts with decimals. And I can actually do this math in my head. When I'm dividing, I can take -4 divided by 2 in my head, and I know that's a -2. So there's the equation. My slope, with an E, slope is -0.15. And my y-intercept is -2. And there we go. So we've had, I don't know, 8-ish problems of this practice now. Hopefully you're getting more familiar with it and you're able to do it and you're able to solve and get the y by itself. This really does come down to a lot of what we did in the very first unit, which was being able to solve an equation. If you are weak there, you're probably weak here. And this is going to be a very common theme for the next 4 units. The next 4 really have to do with equations of lines a lot. So be prepared. Example 4 is writing the equation of a line based off some given information. So here, they're giving me the slope and they're giving me the y-intercept, and they want us to write the equation of a line, which is incredibly simple because we know the formula is y equals mx plus b. I know the slope is the m variable. I know the y-intercept is the b variable. So literally all I do is I take and I plug the slope in for the slope. I take the y-intercept and I plug it in for the y-intercept. And we're done. That's it. That's the whole problem. I'm going to take my slope and plug it in for slope, my y-intercept and plug it in for the y-intercept here in letter B, and we're going to get y equals -2/3 x, the -2/3 is the slope, minus 8. The -8 was my y-intercept. So things I know. I know this line would cross the y-axis at -8. So I'm imagining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Down here is where it crossed the y-axis. And it has a slope of -2/3. So I'd go down 2 over 3. So this line looks something, just kind of playing pretend, something like that. Down 2 over 3, down 2 over 3, down 2 over 3, crossing at -8. That's going to be one of the next few skills we're going to learn about, either in this lesson or the next. Before we get there, could you please pause the video and try these two? I would like you to write the equation of the line for letters C and D in slope-descendant form, and when you're ready, continue, hit play, and we'll go through it together. All right, you should have found y equals negative 4x plus 1.6, slope in for slope, y-intercept in for y-intercept. Letter D, y equals 3/8 x plus 44, slope in for slope, y-intercept in for y-intercept, and we're done. Example 4. It would like us to identify the equation of a line given a table. So we want to match the tables below with their correct equation. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting problem-solving type problem. This is not necessarily straightforward, just write the equation of a line. There's a little bit more to it than that. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause the video. I just want you to try and think and see if you can match up an equation with one of the tables, or two, or three, or four. If you get stuck, which is fine, because we've never done a problem like this before, when you get stuck and you've given up, hit play, and then we'll go through it together. But I want you to try it first. See how you can do. All right. So two of these equations are a little bit easier than the other two. This one here and this one here are a little bit easier. Things I know about them. Well, actually, things I know about all of the equations. I know this first equation has a slope, make the marker a little smaller, has a slope of -9 and a y-intercept of 0. Slope-intercept. 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 Now you might be wondering, well, what is the slope here? Do I just put negative? It's gotta be a number, right? Well, if you don't see a number in front of a variable, it means there is one of them. That is a -1. All right. Now looking at these four tables, then I can see one of these tables has a y-intercept of 8. And how would I know this? Well, up in the vocabulary, I'm going to scroll up there, so give me just a second. Almost there. Oh. In the vocabulary, it says, where your line crosses the y-axis, this is the y-intercept. This always happens when x equals 0. When the x value is 0, that is your y-intercept. All right, so let's go back to the tables. So when the x value is 0, this is one of the y-intercepts. X value of 0, x value of 0, x value of 0. Well, here, when my x value is 0, my y value is 8. That means this table has a y-intercept of 8. That is my y-intercept right there. So now which equation below has a y-intercept of 8? The fourth one here. So these two go together. They have the same y-intercept. This table, the fourth table here, has a y-intercept of 2. Which of the equations has a y-intercept of 2? And it is this second equation. That has a y-intercept of 2. So now I know that these two tables, I mean, they both do have y-intercepts of 0, 0, These both show the same y-intercept, so that doesn't help us. The next piece of the puzzle is this slope of 4 means that each time the x value goes up by 1, the y value would go up by 4. That's what the slope is going to mean. Also, if you would imagine plugging these numbers for x and y into the equation, which one of the equations would the number 2 and 8 work for? If I plug in the 2 for the x and the 8 for the y, would it work in this equation or this equation? The answer is this one. If I plugged in 2 for x and 8 for y and did the math, 4 times 2 is 8. That math checks out because that makes this equation true. And that would have to mean then that this second table would then match up with the first equation. And I can see if I do the same little bit of math here, if I plug in 2 for x and negative 18 for y, this point that I highlighted, x value, y value, and I do the math, I get the same thing on both sides because that point makes the table true, or makes the equation true, because it's on the same line. Okay, this is the first time we're looking at this skill. This is not the last time we're looking at this skill. So if this was very confusing to you, don't worry. We will be looking at this significantly more in following units, okay? So this is just a first glance at it. Almost the last question. I think there's another one like this. Yeah, we've got 2 left. Letter A says, Tony joined a book club. He received 8 free books when he joined. The table below shows the total number of books N he had each month since joining the club. Which equation can be used to find the total number of books N Tony will have from the book club after T months? Okay, I remember finding questions like this very confusing as a kid because of the different letters, N's and T's. But really what it's coming down to is we want to know which of these 4 equations match this table. And they're swapping out. This t would normally be our x variable. The first variable in a table is always the x variable, and the second one is always the y variable. So things I know. I know that this point here is my y-intercept because that is when the x value is 0. When your x value is 0, the y value is the y-intercept. Already, I know the answer is letter D, because that is the only one of the 4 equations that has a y-intercept of 8. Going beyond that, if I plug in the point 0, 8 into each of these equations, this is the only equation that works. Check this out. If I plug in 0 for t and 8 for n, does that math work out? Does 0 times 8 equal 8? If I plug in 0 for t and 8 for n, does that math work out? Does 3 times 0 equal 8? Nah. If I plug in 0 for t and 8 for n, does 8 times 0 plus 3 equal 8? No, because 8 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 is 3. Nah. If I plug in 0 for t and 8 for n, does that math work out? Well, 3 times 0 is 0. Plus 8 equals 8. Yes. Okay, so that's 2 different methods for doing this. You can plug a point in from the table and see which equation works. Or you can look for things like slopes and intercepts and junk like that. All right. So, last question for the lesson. I'd like you to try this one, please. So, the question says, the table below shows a relationship between x and y. What equation represents the relationship between x and y. So your choices are A, is it y equals 2x, B, y equals 4x, C, y equals x plus 6, or D, y equals 2x plus 6. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video, try this on your own right now, and when you're ready, continue, hit play, and we'll go through it together. All right. So right away, you might have noticed you can't use the trick of looking for the y-intercept. This is not the y-intercept because my x value is not 0. The y-intercept happens when x is 0. So you could not have used that same trick. But you could have used plugging in the points trick. If I plug in this point into each of the 4 equations, check this out. 2 for x, 8 for y. 2 for x, 8 for y. Is 2 times 2 equal to 8? No. 2 for x, 8 for y. Is 4 times 2 equal to 8? Yes. But it could also work on more than one equation. Check this out. I saw 2 for x, 8 for y. It works out here too. That works. 2 for x, 8 for y. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. 8 equals 6. Nah. So we've narrowed it down to either B or C with just plugging in one point. Now, do you know how we figure out which of these two is the right one? Oh, we plug in another point. Only one of these equations will work with every single point. Only one of these equations will work with any 2 of the points. So check this out. If I plug in 10 for y and 4 for x, that's what it says. 10 for y and 4 for x. Is 10 equal to 4 times 4? Nope. Is 10 equal to 4 plus 6? Yes. And I've eliminated all the other choices. This one was the right one. Now, you also could have used the y-intercept thing if you were a little bit, tricky's the wrong word, crafty, I'll call it. Check this out. We know the y-intercept happens when the x value is 0, right? Well, you could have worked this pattern backwards and found what the y-intercept is. Check this out. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. Each of the x values going up, you're subtracting 2. That's the pattern. On the y side, each of the y values, as you move up the table, goes 16, 14, 12, 10, 8. You are also subtracting 2, which would give you a y-intercept of 6. This is the equation with a y-intercept of 6. You could have found the slope by looking at this table. If you picked 2 points, like we learned in the previous lesson, and found the slope, you'd find the slope was equal to 1. Only one of the equations had a slope of 1. So there was like 3 or 4 different ways of doing this problem, but we did it. For the summary, could you please pause the video and give me 3 examples of equations in slope-intercept form? Make them up. Just draw or write, make 3 equations that look like slope-intercept form right now. Y equals 2x plus 8. Y equals negative 1/2 x minus 9. Y equals 2.34x minus 3/4 are all slope-intercept form. The y variable is by itself. There's no weird exponents on any of the variables. The number in front of the x is the slope, and the number in the back, the constant, is the y-intercept. Thank you so much for watching this lesson on understanding slope-intercept form, and hopefully you do now understand what slope-intercept form is, how to write it, how to make it, how to get it from excuse me, from graphs, from lots of different things, and we're going to continue expanding on this over the next few lessons. Until next time,